name is Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
I hope I pronounce her name properly. Thais Gibson.
I am so excited for you to be here with me today. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Can This Be Fixed? Today, Mike and I are going to do a deep dive into a few really powerful topics. And if you're new here or just stopping by for the first time, Mike used to be a dismissive avoidant prior to doing a lot of the healing work and deep work, and is now secure. And I used to be a very strong, fearful avoidant, if you didn't already know that about me. And so, a lot of this podcast today, you'll hear from our perspectives now, but also from the inside world of what it was like to be a fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant attachment style. And I know that that's a lot of information that often anxious attachment styles are seeking. And obviously it can also hopefully help put a lot of feelings and experiences into words for both current FAs or current dismissive avoidants. So we're going to dive into three major topics today. One is from our Reddit thread, Can This Be Fixed? Which is all about if there is a tactful way to suggest to an avoidant to look into this subject matter. So we're going to come to that at the end. But first, we're going to dive into the topic of phantom exes. And have you ever regretted and wanted to go back to an ex after breaking up and wish that you had treated them better after realizing your avoidance? So let's kick off with this one. And I want to sort of dive into from the perspective, Mike, of if you have ever, when you were a dismissive avoidant, wanted to go back to an ex and what that felt like and what those reasons were and what kind of drew you back in. But also after doing the work, how you felt about going back to an ex.
So when I first read that question, right away I thought, no, probably didn't want to, because getting out of the relationship was such a relief and such a washed away all my core wounds that were triggered a lot in the relationship. So it was almost that sense of relief that finally came. I was like, okay, I'm out. I feel good now. I feel free. I'm not trapped. There's no expectations. There's no responsibility. There's not me needing to meet their needs all the time. There was sort of this huge wave of relief. There might have been a time later on where I was like, hey, I kind of miss this person. We actually had some pretty good times and this person was actually pretty sweet to me. And, they thought I was a good person and there was a lot of positives to it. But I think the fear of not being good enough again, of sort of letting them back in and then going back to square one with nothing really changing, that fear sort of was greater than the fear of sort of the desire of missing them a lot, if that makes sense.
100%.
So I was more worried that I don't want those core wounds to pop up again. And I didn't feel confident enough to share what was going on inside for me. So I felt like I almost didn't have the armor. If they were to come back and we were to try again, I'd feel disempowered to actually share what's going on with me, share what my needs are, share what I need in the relationship. So I'm like, if they come back in, it's going to be the same old story. So I'd rather stay where I am now, which is very comfortable. And no one's really having any big expectations of me.
And I want to speak to a lot of dismissive avoidance too, because I would see tons and work with them. And I would say a lot of the time that was just exactly what they would feel. They would feel like, okay, yeah, I do miss this person. Yeah, I do still have feelings for this person. But I don't want to go back into the same cycle. And I think that underneath that at the time is a disempowerment in terms of knowing how to deal with it or fix it, right? It's almost like this dynamic of going, it's an unknown. Like you say now, because now, oh, I didn't know how to share my needs, or I don't know how to approach the need side of things. But, at the time, rather than it being a now situation, now you can look back and reflect that way. But at the time, it's kind of an unknown, you don't even know that you don't know that you have needs, And so It's sort of this mind warping experience. But I have seen, and I would say definitely in longer term relationships, I would say there's a good chunk of dismissive avoidants who do end up wanting to go back. But it's this delayed period. I almost think of it as this boomerang effect where there'll be this, 3 to 6 weeks of freedom. It's all good. Even up to 3 months. Sometimes it doesn't even start till 6 weeks. 3 to 6 is more fearful avoidance. 6 to 3 months is often dismissive avoidant. Oh, it's all good. And then there's this delayed period of later on going, wait, I actually do miss my ex, or I actually, I'm wondering what they're doing and kind of wanting to reach out and see where that person's at, but not wanting be vulnerable either. So sort of being in that position. And what about once you became secure? Did you find like that when you think of, an ex now or getting back together with an ex at that period of time, what did your relationship become to that?
Yeah, that's interesting because I've thought about that before too. And I've always thought it would be interesting to sort of go back and try again, because I think I'd be definitely better suited to help the relationship along with some of the communication issues that we used to have. However, I kind of want to know if they've done work as well, because I know I've done a lot of work for myself. And I know we sort of attracted each other at a point where, I had a lot of deep insecurities. They had a lot of wounds and insecurities. So we sort of like were filling each other's holes there. So I wonder if we went back now, let's say that they didn't do any work on themselves, maybe it would be a lot of, conflict and a lot of, I guess, I could be the leader in the relationship where they say, if you've done a lot of work, you can be the one who sort of models the healthy communication and leads it along that way. But I don't know. It's such a tricky question. I don't know.
Well, I think that something that's fair, this is just my opinion, but I think something that's fair is like if you're in a relationship and you love somebody and you're currently in the relationship and then you come across this stuff, cool.
Yeah.
Be the leader that models the communication. But if you've fully broken up and then you've done all this work and then the other person hasn't, your like risk reward profile is a little different. It's not like you're still in it and you're in love and the feelings are there and like, hopefully both people are willing to do the work because you're still in the relationship and there's a greater chance. But it's like once you've fully broken up, it's like, then do you want to go back and see if the person's willing to do the work? And I think at that point you can vet for it and check it out. But like it's not quite the same as when you're in the relationship doing the work.
Yeah, 100%. And how about for yourself, Thais? Like, did you want to get back to an ex that you wish you treated better after realizing your own avoidance? What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that when I was fearful avoidant, I would definitely have like a period of time where this is a pretty common theme for me after a breakup, where I would like go through a breakup. I think I would realize that I was a lot of like the problem in a sense. Like I would realize like, oh, I really pushed the person away, or I wasn't giving them a fair chance, or, things like that. And I would realize, okay, this is kind of like a me issue. And then I would I guess, I don't know if I would say regret, but I would sort of feel like, oh, okay, like I really see my own part. And a couple of relationships, like when I was still fearful avoidant at the time. So this is like dating back quite a ways, but in relationships then when I was still FA, I would think about getting back together with them for sure, but I would kind of get caught in this like gray area of like wanting to reach out to people and like reconnect, but also not like being ready to be back in a relationship. So like wanting the like comfort and connection of a relationship or, of the connection with that person, but not necessarily wanting like everything that the relationship entails. So I'd often like after a breakup with somebody have kind of like a rebound period with them where I kind of like reconnect with them and spend time with them and hang out with them, almost like as if you're in a relationship again, but not putting a label. And then in a few cases, as soon as that person would like suggest a label or like, should we try this again? I would like run away. And so I was probably a very confusing person to people. I feel a little bit badly about that, but I think that's the ambivalence of fearful avoidant. And I think that there's this dynamic of going, I want the connection. I want the comfort and the closeness and like the depth of emotional closeness that comes with that. But I don't want all the hardship. And I think every time that I was in a relationship when I was fearful avoidant, it was like I just thought it was so hard to be in relationships. Like just I feel like with the fearful avoidance too, because they have that anxious side and that dismissive side in a sense.
Yeah.
It's like there's no like you're not like in the middle. You're like either super anxious or super avoidant. Like, and just to go from like one extreme to the other all the time in relationships is exhausting. And what I would find too, which was a really big thing for me, is I was really good in the dating stage. Like if we were just dating, getting to know each other, took nothing personally, didn't feel any like fears or wounds coming up, because I didn't feel like that person owed me anything really. Like there wasn't a commitment yet. But as soon as there would be a commitment, like, okay, we're now in a relationship, all the things would pop up for me. Like, oh, can I really trust this person? Now there's a commitment, like this could be broken. They
Yeah.
might break the trust. And so then all of my wounds would come up, and it would be in that stage where I like was developing stronger feelings, but that I also felt like, okay, now there's this real connection and commitment that all these things could go wrong. And that would be the place that I would feel like I spiraled from. And then it would
Yeah.
sustain that spiraling for a while. Kind of on and off throughout the honeymoon stage, it would get really big in the power struggle. And then I would usually run away or like sort of break up. And then I would look back and be like, wait, do I really want to feel like that again? Like all that hardship, all that like confusion and all those ups and downs. And so ultimately I wouldn't end up being back in a relationship. And then for once I became secure, it was definitely much longer after being in relationships. So once I actually became secure, I definitely didn't have a period of time where I was like, oh, I want to be with my ex of any sort or any ex that I dated. Because I just felt like I was like in a totally different like frame of mind and reference than I was at the time of any relationship. But what I did do, and what I'm a big believer in is sort of like, one of the steps from the 12 steps is like making amends really. And what I did do is when I realized that I was avoidant, when I actually like realized like what it meant to be fearful avoidant, and I really started to like introspect and take a big look at my own patterns, people who I left relationships with on decent terms actually reached out to and tried to like apologize for my part or how I treated somebody. And even if it wasn't anything like so extreme that I did, just like my unhealthy patterns, I realized like, hey, that could have an impact on people on their future relationships. And so I really tried to kind of like make amends and say something kind and apologize for how I showed up in different cases. And I think that was for me as much as that was for that person in each circumstance. But it was really healing for me to do that. I felt great about doing that, like just like owning that. And I don't know, there's something really powerful to me about making amends with people. So I'm a big believer in all of that.
Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to ask one question on something you touched on for fearful avoidance when they're out of the relationship and things are sort of more ambiguous and casual. So there's no real worry. You're not worrying like when something bad's going to happen. Like you're not just constantly on high alert. And it's just until you get into the relationship that you're kind of constantly 24/7 worried about the relationship.
That was definitely my experience. And I would say that's like
Yeah.
80-90% of the fearful avoidance I worked with over the years seem to mirror
Wow.
that pattern. And I think it's because like once there's something there, I think that it's really the commitment. Because now it's like you think of like a commitment, like now there's something that can be broken, trust can be broken, right? If
Yeah.
we didn't know each other or anything, because we hadn't like made some sort of commitment to trusting each other or investing each other in a special way, then
Yeah.
nothing is to be broken. And so it's kind of like it's one step removed and it's not as vulnerable, but it's
Yeah.
for sure a combination of like when things get more vulnerable and there's more feelings, and when there's actually like a commitment towards something, okay, now there's something that could really be broken there.
So then I know dismissive avoidance with friends with benefit situations, they kind of enjoy those situations because they're getting a lot of the, physical benefits and affection and all this kind of stuff without the heavy, intense emotional investment and things like that. Do FAs also not mind friends with benefit situations because there's not that sort of high stakes and not so much to lose?
That's a great question. I
Yeah.
feel like if there was a set of things, it would be like like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like it would be like the dismissive avoidant is like they want the friends with benefits. And again, this isn't all dismissive avoidance or the
Yeah.
only archetype of how it looks, but there's like this is sort of like the overarching, like 70% or so want the friends with benefits situation where they have that like closeness without it being too close, and they don't really want to have talks about like the future or too deep of conversations or have somebody rely on them too much or get too emotionally close to them. And so they'll do really well in that first sort of season of like friends with benefits with like keeping somebody fully an arm's length away. Fearful avoidance, I often joke like they want to act like they're in a relationship without ever saying they're in a relationship. They want like all of the goods and services tied to the relationship. They want the emotional intimacy, the relying on each other, the opening up, the deep conversations, the frequency of time, the investment of intimacy, and they just don't want the label. Like that seems to be where when fearful avoidants are afraid. And listen, some fearful avoidants will like rush full into the label, but it's really like once that label happens that things often start to spiral for them. And so they have this sweet spot where it's like when you have that like, optimal level of closeness before a serious commitment, that tends to be where they're kind of at their peak of like having the best time in dating and relationships. But once now there's this commitment, that's where like, oh, everything starts to get really shaky.
Right. And then lastly, what would be your advice for if somebody's dating a fearful avoidant and they notice that sort of shift of once they've sort of gone into commitment mode and they see their partner is starting to get really like kind of worked up and anxious? Is there something someone can do to sort of hamper that a bit and help their partner out?
That's such a great question too. I think that one of the first things is to have a conversation about it. I think fearful avoidants don't realize that they're doing that. And honestly, it's very common for fearful avoidants to get really ambivalent as soon as there is a big commitment. So like, you know, it could be first putting a label on a relationship. It could be next, like, okay, we finally sorted out the kinks there. Now we're going to move in together. Oh, that's the next big commitment. You'll see a lot of the ambivalence and the sort of spiraling a little bit, or then we move in, then getting married, or having a family. Like these big commitments, they'll tend to sort of drum up some of that ambivalent nurture of the fearful avoidant. And if you're a partner in that place, the first thing to do is to talk about it. And I think at the deepest core, it's this fear of betrayal, this fear of this big belief. I always carried this belief when I was FA really strongly. I truly believed that I was going to be really hurt in the end. Like I truly believe that this person's going to like end up betraying me in some kind of way, even if it's not in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, it's inevitable eventually. And that's going to cause the relationship to destruct. And, so the more I like would gain feelings for somebody, the more I would feel deeply, the more I would also like feel like it was a very bittersweet feeling when it came to like falling in love or like developing real feelings for somebody. It would be like the more I cared or loved, the more I also felt like frightened and kind of like torn up inside about it. Like, oh geez, like I'm really caring now, and like that's gonna really hurt me later. And so it would cause this kind of friction period. And I think that a lot of fearful avoidants have this idea where you usually go dating, honeymoon, power struggle stage, break up, start dating again with a new person, honeymoon, power struggle stage, break up. And you don't realize that there's like actually a life cycle to the relationship that goes on. There's like the stability, the commitment, the bliss stage. And so fearful avoidants just think it almost like fuels that belief, right? If you've only had relationships that hit those first 3 stages in your history, then you're like, it's always either really good or really bad. And it just seems to like, fuel that belief. And I think having a conversation to say like, look, here's where we're at. Like, here's how we're going to grow through problems together. For a fearful avoidant to learn to communicate their needs, to actually set boundaries so they can like retain a relationship to themselves while being in a relationship with somebody else. And honestly, I think the biggest part at the end of the day is to really do a lot of the auto suggestion work, like a lot of that reprogramming work on those big core wounds. Because if you constantly believe you're going to be hurt in the end or betrayed eventually, then you're always going to have your guard up deep down. So I think a lot of it has to be the work done by the person. But the more you can encourage your fearful avoidant partner to communicate about their needs, to have boundaries, to work through problems and work through conflict together so that you're stronger from it, I think that's where the needle really moves.
Nice. Super helpful for anyone with an FA partner. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm curious, just from your end, if you had to say that when you were DA, things that would be really helpful for you if you were starting to feel that sense of fear as things got more real, what would have helped you at the time?
I guess somebody reassuring that, I'm worth the commitment, that they see something in me that's worth sticking around for, that, they're not going to, find something out about me and think like, oh, this person's really messed up, or, oh, that's super unattractive. Like almost reassuring me that there's sort of nothing you can do that's going to like turn me off or make me just go, ooh, that's like really unattractive. So I was really worried about, people finding out that I was defective and like not good enough, like to see the broken parts of myself. But I guess if the other person, like I said, would sort of convey that, hey, like I have issues and things going on inside of me that I'm not, 100% in love with, but that's okay. And I feel that way about you as well. Like if there's things that come up, that's fine. Like I like you. I think you're worth spending time with. Here's some of the reasons why. Again, DAs kind of like to hear the reasons why, because we almost don't believe like somebody likes us that much. We think like, they might like the surface level of us, or they like spending time with us. We could be a little bit of fun. But we think like if they're to really see what was going on inside, they'd be like, that would be a hard no for them. So I guess it would be someone, commenting more on like your essence, like, wow, I really like how you, I don't know, talk to the waitress when we're at the restaurant. I really like how you, give money to a homeless person. You have a really big heart. So it's like commenting on things that you might not even see through yourself, and somebody else outside of you kind of giving you a different perspective of like, hey, like, you're not defective. You're not totally screwed up. You actually have things about you that are really, really awesome and fun to be around. So I think those were the biggest things. Now, when I'm talking about it, I'm thinking, well, that's not fair. You shouldn't want someone else to do that for you. Like, I should be doing that for myself. However, if you ask me at my most unhealed, when like the I am defective wound, the I am not good enough wound were like super deep, I know that would have lessened a lot of anxiety and worry that the person's going to eventually abandon me. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's such an amazing share. And to your point, like, yeah, you can do that work on yourself, but interdependence is a real thing, right? It's like the ability to like give that information so that a partner can consider their partner and like have that and lean on them and love them and like meet their needs, and for that person to do the work too. It's really both, not like either or. So I think that's a really powerful share for anybody who might be in a relationship now with somebody who's feeling like that. And I think the funny part is like so many people who date dismissive avoidance, they have no idea that their partner feels that way or needs that, because it's like you're so stoic and you present in a way that's like, oh, I'm all good, everything's fine, or like even retreat more when you're in a place where you're not feeling your best. So it's like you never see that vulnerability for even that person to find out that could be something you need. So I think it's really powerful to be sharing that with people.
And I know we said it last episode, and we'll keep on hammering this, like DAs, you have to share what's going on inside for you, because the other people, they just won't know, and they might say something or might do something and not realize that they're really touching a nerve. So open up and share it with them, and your partner is hopefully going to want to work with you and avoid those things that they know might be a little sensitive to you. So, and that works vice versa. Anytime you open up, you're actually giving the other person permission. Hey, wow, like I can share now too. Like this is a safe space. So it's wicked. Yeah.
And fearful avoidance too, like fearful avoidance, even anxious preoccupied. They sometimes think they're more emotionally available, but when you're people pleasing, you're not that emotionally available at those moments. So it's a part of healing. It's a part of the journey to share and open up and become secure. So I love that you keep saying that. I think we'll make sure we keep saying that throughout all the episodes. So we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to dive into phantom exes and avoidant attachment style. So we'll talk about phantom exes for FAs, DAs. We'll even talk a little bit about how it affects APs. And then we'll talk about how to suggest an avoidant looks into the subject matter of attachment styles. We'll be right back on Can This Be Fixed? I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. Welcome back. We are going to talk about if an avoidant attachment style has a phantom ex. Mike and I will share personal experiences from when we were fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. Also, if you're just stopping by for the first time, we have a full video version of this on YouTube. Or if you are watching on YouTube, you can check this out. If you want to listen on the road or anything like that, we are on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So I have another great question that came in, and it was all about phantom exes. So the question is actually for Mike. Does Mike have a phantom ex? And I was like, let's talk about this. Let's both chat and share about that. So I'm curious, like, obviously once you become secure, do you have a phantom ex? But I think the real important information will be like, when you were dismissive avoidant, did you have a phantom ex? And what did that look like to you at the time?
Yeah, I think I've had a few phantom exes while I was in relationships. So I always thought it was like super normal to be friends with your ex, down the road a little bit. Like we got to know each other really well. They know me really well. So what's the point of just like throwing it all away? So when I was in new relationships, I remember some partners would kind of be like not super happy about it. And I'd be like, why? Like, what's wrong with me talking to my ex? Like she's a great person. Like she's not a terrible person, and we don't have anything going on anymore. But I realized like I was kind of still friends with them because I was going back to where things were just sort of light and not like a lot of expectation. So, I'd be talking to them and all that expectation was gone. So they would just be happy that we were friends, that we were just talking, we were in each other's lives. So I got to see kind of like the version of them that the avoidance self always wanted, the one that didn't like expect a lot of things from me, that didn't need their needs to be met, that kept things very light, didn't have vulnerable conversations. Like it was just all fun. So of course, when I was in this new relationship, when I'm talking to my ex, everything's great. And I'm thinking, wow, like my ex is a pretty awesome person. Like we have such a good relationship. When really, like I said, I think it's just, we didn't have that relationship title anymore. So it's easy to see them in a different light and put them on a bit of a pedestal and be like, wow, my ex is actually like super cool and super fun and easygoing. She doesn't expect much of me. And the new relationship would be like, hey, like what's going on here? Like, I think you're talking to your ex a little too much. And I just never really saw the issue with it. But
I
now
love that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead. Now that you're secure, it's just such an important share. Like, I think that it puts into words probably something that a lot of avoidants don't realize that they're doing, which is
Mhm.
being in a situation where like, okay, cool, your ex now expects almost nothing from you. So of course you're going to see that like best version according to your needs.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's not the whole picture of how a person would show up in a relationship. So what about once you actually became secure, what did you find about how your relationship to Phantom X has changed or what you saw at that point?
Yeah, I just found now that when a relationship didn't work out, that was sort of the end of it because we both came together with the intention of forming like a long-term serious relationship. And I was just finding once I did the work and became more secure that if that sort of wasn't met on both ends, like we could respectfully say, like, we tried or things are not working out. And then I think we both didn't really see a point of sort of maintaining that friendship relationship.
Mm.
Because I'm a firm believer that like your energy and where you put your energy is like such a huge currency. And if you're going to be spending that in that area, you're taking away from like something new to come in. You're taking that away from cultivating and nurturing the relationships that are already in your life or that you want to come into your life. So I'm just finding from a secure perspective that being friends with an ex, it's okay to catch up, I guess, once in a while. And if you see someone online, you can say hi and have a little catch up. But I'm just finding that I go into dating now with more intention of what I want. And if it didn't work out the way that we wanted it to, that's fine, no problem. But then I tend to, move on to focusing somewhere else. And the Phantom X just doesn't really have a hold anymore. So
I love that. I think that's such a great share and just has like so
mm,
much weight in terms of how things show up. One thing I'm interested in hearing from your perspective is let's say you have like you said something earlier and I'm like, okay, that's I find that people tend to go on two sides. So one side is I dated somebody, it didn't work out. I never want to speak to them again after a breakup. For my own healing, they're like basically no longer exist in my realm or my reality. And that's how
yeah,
one sort of set of people copes. The other side is sort of like you said earlier, well, I had such a great relationship to somebody. And why would I do that? Or, why would I just like cut them out from my life? Like we shared so many experiences. And my thing is, I think that there's a difference between being like really good friends versus being friendly.
hmm
And, I think if, okay, yeah, you say, you touch base with the person once every few years, oh, hey, how are you? Or hope you're doing well, or something like that. Or the person, you run into the person or something like that. I think friendly or leaving on good terms is actually healthy. Like to have somebody like living rent free in your head because you're angry at them or something like that. That's where it's like, okay, clearly more unhealthy territory. But I'm curious to from your perspective, having been dated and becoming secure, what would your boundaries be in a relationship if you were dating somebody now, and let's say you were like, this is a person I can really see myself being with long term, and that person was friendly with their ex, what would be your line there?
Wow, that's a really good one. As long as they were not like hiding the relationship, and if they, I guess, eventually introduced me to the person, like if there was this real big effort to keep me separate from them, and like, there was this kind of weird space where it's like, oh, you're not supposed to meet them or talk to them, then I'd probably think that's a little bit weird. But if there was an effort in me like meeting them and getting to like say hi to them and see how they are, how they interact, because I feel like once you see them together, like you would know in like 1 second if there's like something going on there.
For
Because
sure.
so many times I've met like girls that I've dated their exes before, and right away I'm like, I can tell like there's nothing going on there. There's nothing to worry about. But I remember a long time ago, I met a couple exes where I'm like, oh, I think there's still something there. Like it seems a little more than meets the eye. Uh,
Okay, interesting.
yeah. So, but then to flip it on the other side of the equation, if I was friends with an ex, but then I'm in a new relationship and my partner was really uncomfortable with it, I think in the past I would have fought them on it and be like, "Oh no, you're being crazy! Like, stop bothering me, stop trying to end the friendship." I would probably lean more towards like, this is the person I'm committing to. This is the person I want to grow with and cultivate a positive relationship with. And if they're like really uncomfortable with it, then I'd maybe consider just telling my ex, hey, like we could still like maybe talk once in a blue moon or catch up once in a while. But my current partner is not the most comfortable with us being friends. So maybe we should just, be a little more distant. I don't know.
I
That's
think
my
that's a
sort of,
great answer. I think that's super
yeah.
healthy and makes so much sense. And like I like that you're saying it would be a conversation. I think that you're right. Like if the person, has a long history, sometimes it's tough because I've seen people in client practice who like they were friends with somebody for 15 years, then dated them for 8 months, it didn't work out. And then, they reestablished a friendship and then you started dating them after that happened. And now they have this friend that was an ex. And I think there's like a lot of layers and nuances. Obviously, if somebody was already friends with an ex before we start dating them or things like that,
Yeah.
that, there's so many different like variations of the scenario. But I think the common themes are like, are you hiding the person? Are you like integrating them into our life and relationship? I also think that I've seen situations where somebody's friends with their ex and they talk to them once a month and they're like, they're friends, they're cool, everything's good. And
Mm.
that there've been really healthy experiences I've seen with clients who had a relationship like that. And that was fine. But then I've also had clients who are like, yeah, I'm friends with my ex and we talk every day. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I don't think your partner is going to feel that comfortable with when you're talking to somebody every day. Like that's as much as you would talk to somebody in a relationship. And so I think there's like lines and boundaries for those reasons where
Right. Right.
even if there's not like a physical relationship, maybe there's still like a really deep emotional relationship. And at what point does that probably cross the line when it comes to dating
Mhm.
somebody and having this friendship that you're so close with somebody who you once dated? And I think there's sort of boundaries on each level, but the more there's integration, the more there's transparency, the more there's like more in the friendly territory than like, oh, I talk to them all like, every single day or so often. I think there's a lot
Mhm.
of places that there can be a healthy friendship with an ex. And then a lot of places where it can turn into almost like micro cheating if it's not, clearly talked about and there's not like a healthy line somewhere.
I think too, I love those comments there. And I think also as well, it depends on like how fresh the sort of breakup is. Like if they're friends and they didn't even have that mourning period or time to like really process the breakup and they've sort of like jumped to the next relationship and then they're
Huge
still
red flag.
friends,
Yeah.
that would be a little bit too much. But I like what you said about, if you knew someone 15 years before, you guys dated for, a few months and you've been friends for the last 15 years, there's no way you'd be like, oh, I can't be friends with you anymore. My ex doesn't like it because you're a female, So, and when you were saying that, it was just reminding me, like, I have one friend who I've known for about 20 years. We dated for a few months. It didn't work out romantically, but we're just amazing friends. In my head, I wouldn't even consider that as like an ex. I always introduce her to my current people that I'm dating as like, hey, this is my friend Robin. I've known her for 20 years since we were 15. She's amazing. So like you said, it's all about transparency. It's all about sort of sharing who the person is, how long you've known them for, where you know them from. And, as long as you're being open and not being weird and sketchy with it, I think that's usually not a problem. And flipping it back to you, Thais, did you ever have a Phantom X as a fearful avoidant?
Definitely. I would say that was like a big theme almost as a fearful avoidant. And it wasn't like a single person. It would more be like a theme of me getting into a relationship and then comparing the bad moments of my current relationship to the good moments of my past relationship. That's what I would do a lot of. And I think there's a few reasons for this. I mean, like, first of all, whenever we have a Phantom X, like the root cause of what's actually going on is that we have unmet needs and we're not getting those needs met. And so our mind, our subconscious mind goes back to, okay, what are my recent like memories and experiences of having these needs met? And sources the most recent, version of that. And so a lot of what that ends up being is like a past relationship. And so, and that mine was exactly par for the course. Like if I look at times I had a Phantom X, I remember one example is I was dating somebody who was like really carefree. And that was something I appreciated about that person when I first started dating them. But then later into the relationship, I kind of was like, oh, they're too carefree. And then before that, I dated somebody really serious. And I kept being like, oh, my ex was better with this kind of thing. And I would think that in my mind, like, oh, they were more serious and responsible. And like, I should probably have been with somebody like that. And like all it was, it would be a habit, right? Then that person, when they were more serious, the person before that, I would compare to like other qualities and be like, oh, that other person was more this way or that way. So I think there was this coping mechanism. And for fearful avoidance, I think there's two big reasons. That first one is you have unmet needs. And as a fearful avoidant at the time, you don't know that you even have needs. So you don't know how to communicate those needs or convey them to somebody. So then they go unmet and then we go into like the past. But then the other thing is, I think it's also a bit of a defense mechanism, right? Like when you're still scared that you're going to get hurt one day or that things are going to end poorly, then you have this big fear. And from that fear, you're like, I don't want to be all in. And so there's this subconscious strategy, in a sense, to have this dynamic of going, well, I'm not going to be all in if I think about how other people have other qualities that I'm looking for instead. Or if I fantasize or think about other people that I've dated and think about how like, oh, this would be better in this situation or that situation. I think a big part of it is also a defense mechanism. And so I would definitely see that when I was fearful avoidant. And when I became secure, that really went away. Like I didn't really think about exes in general very much.
Yeah.
And again, like I guess because I was self-sourcing my needs a lot better, I was communicating needs to people in my life in a different way. And like those needs buckets were really filled. And then also I think the other part of it is that like I was more comfortable being vulnerable. So I could be vulnerable. I could get my needs met. I wasn't so afraid. I didn't have all these core wounds of I'm going to be betrayed in the future or abandoned or things are going to end terribly one day. So it actually felt safe to connect and to commit. And prior to that, my mind was like resisting against that. So I think because I solved those two root problems, it solved for having the Phantom X. But I think that something that's really hard is when we don't know that that's what's happening, we actually buy into the Phantom X story, right? We buy in. I would see this all the time in my practice. I would see people, talking about the Phantom X and having like somebody they were kind of obsessing over even. And they didn't realize it was the need they were obsessing over more than the person. And that the Phantom X was also serving as a defense mechanism. And so when you could break those two things down with people and work through them, the Phantom X concept or idea would go away and it would sort of naturally melt away. But if you didn't target root cause, it would just show up in different forms across time.
Right. That's so interesting. And did you ever have a situation where the person you were dating had a Phantom X, and how did that sort of affect you, and how did you sort of approach that?
You know what? I think only in my very first semi-serious relationship. It was like 10th grade. So as serious as your relationship can be in like 10th grade.
Yeah.
The two people I dated after definitely didn't. And definitely not like my adult relationships. But my very first relationship, I remember, that he would talk about his ex a lot. And I actually remember one day being in a taxi. We were at like a little high school party, and there was another couple that we were there with. And he started talking about his ex, and his friend was like, "Oh, is she hot?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And in that moment, like, I just felt like, oh, like there's something there. And like, for sure, that was the moment for me that the relationship ended. Because, and I didn't know how to talk about that at the time or anything. Like, I would just like literally shut down so much. But for me, when that happened, I was like, oh, like I'm done with this relationship. And it like slowly really ended quite quickly after that. And I started sabotaging it in lots of ways. But it's funny because that like affected me a lot at the time. I've never thought about that since this moment as an adult. But for sure, I started like sabotaging the relationship a ton after that, because it wasn't just like, oh, he's talking about his ex in a discussion way, or we're sharing stories or whatever, with like in a more like present sort of variation. And so, and it's, I think it's a hard thing for people to be on the other side of too, right? Like if you're on the other side of witnessing somebody who has a phantom ex, like that's me in 10th grade, but like sometimes this is people in their real life adult relationships with kids, sometimes this is people way later. And I guess if I could share a helpful piece of insight for anybody who's going through that now, have the conversation about needs, because really it's going to always boil down to like unmet needs that you're projecting onto a past person as a strategy to get them met in the fantasy world. Because the subconscious mind, essentially, when it can't get its needs met in the present reality, we break into fantasies of the future or memories of the past. And the Phantom X is kind of a combination of both. And so most often it's a needs topic that has to be discussed. And hopefully, the person you're in a relationship with would be willing to have that discussion with you and resolve it with you, because that's a huge opportunity for growth. And I think a Phantom X, it literally is symbolic and represents a huge opportunity for growth. But of course, if the person can't or won't go there with you or grow in that direction with you, then there's only so much you can do in that particular case.
And just to be clear, if it's somebody who is struggling when their partner has a Phantom X, that generally, like you said, it's not a knock on you and like you're deficient or there's something that you have that's just not good enough. It's the person getting some needs met through fantasy or thinking about the past needs that were met. And it has nothing to do with sort of your worth or what you bring to the table in a relationship.
100%. And there's a reason it trends towards avoidance. Phantom X's usually come with FAs and DAs more so. APs can have them, but it's usually an FA-DA thing more than anything. And the reason is because at the time, the avoidants don't communicate their needs, right? They like literally don't know how to communicate their needs. So exactly to your point, I'm so glad you said that. Exactly to your point, it's not the person, who's dating the person with the Phantom X. It's that we're not mind readers. We're just human beings. And if your person you're dating is not communicating that they have a need, you can't possibly know. And so it puts the relationship in a hard situation, because the person doesn't realize that it's this coping mechanism that at its core is from a lack of healthy communication taking place.
Exactly. Super helpful.
Awesome stuff. Okay, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. And when we come back, we are going to share another question specifically from the Can This Be Fixed thread on Reddit, all about how to share about attachment styles with a DA. Be right back. So let's take a quick break for our sponsor. Have you ever signed up for a cell phone plan that seemed affordable only to be shocked by how much your bill ends up costing you each month? Because I know that's happened to me. And I feel your pain. Mint Mobile is here to recuse you from those unexpected charges with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. And when they say $15 a month, they actually mean it. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, you can use your own phone and keep your current phone number too. Switch away from overpriced wireless plans and get 3 months of premium wireless access for just $15 a month with Mint Mobile. To get this new customer offer, go to mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. That's mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. There's a $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Now for a quick message from our sponsor. Can you believe it? In just a couple of months, it'll be time to switch our wardrobe over from summer to fall. Luckily, I found a way to stay stylish as the leaves change without breaking the bank thanks to Quince. Quince has quickly become my go-to for luxurious cashmere sweaters, pants for every occasion, elegant silk tops, and long cozy cardigans. Their collection makes it so effortless to refresh my wardrobe every season with high-quality pieces. I personally can't stop wearing their athletic wear, both at the gym and even just casually around the house. I snagged several shirts in beautiful colors and love that they feel so soft and so breathable. The best part is that by partnering with top-tier factories, Quince eliminates the middleman and passes the savings directly to us. This means that their items are priced at 50 to 80% lower than similar brands, making luxury super accessible. But what I love the most about Quince is that they are committed to ethical fashion. They only collaborate with factories that uphold safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. So not only do we look good, but feel good about our choices. Make switching a season's breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Head to quince.com/Thais for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE/Thais to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Thais. Welcome back. Okay, let's talk about it, Mike. So here's a question from the Reddit thread. By the way, if you want to post on the Reddit thread, you can check it out. Also, by the way, if you want to check out anything from the Personal Development School, any courses on healing your attachment style, reconditioning it, I will put a link in the show notes here and in the YouTube video to a 7-day free trial that's available for that limited time. So this question from Reddit says, is there any tactful way to suggest to an avoidant to look into the subject matter? As you can probably guess, says the thread, I'm anxious in the now defunct relationship. As much as I want to send a couple of YouTube videos her way, I don't think it will be taken well. Is it worth it to try to get a friend to let her know or do something anonymously, which will probably figure out as me anyways? It's a shot in the dark anyway, because I believe the avoidance background has left her irreparably damaged. Okay, so let's talk about it. Love to hear your thoughts on that first, Mike.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's interesting, number one, how this person has this dire need that, their ex needs this information, needs to heal. So number one, I guess that's very nice when you see somebody who can benefit in some way, shape, or form. It's nice you want to help them. However, I just don't want you to get into the territory of like codependency where you feel like you're responsible for their issues and their healing. Because really, we're all here on this planet. We're all going to have our own set of sort of things that we need to overcome. And the thing is, that's for us to overcome. And you might be able to push this stuff in their face and show them, hey, this is it. Like, this will help you so much. But if they're not ready for it, you're just going to be wasting your energy and your time, because everyone has sort of a point where they finally decide like, hey, I need to do this healing, or some sort of light bulb goes off and then they go all into their healing. So I just want to preface that with, it's nice that you want to help the person. However, this is their journey and you have to respect that it might not be time for them to heal at this moment, even though we want them to, because we care about them. But the other way, if you want to help someone, so if you said you were going to go through your friend, I would tell your friend to tell this person that they've learned something about attachment theory for themselves. So you're going to preface it that they found this amazing thing that's so helpful in their own life. It's helped them navigate their own subconscious blueprint. So now that they have learned it and they've done some of the healing work, they show up so much better in relationships. They understand the behaviors and patterns that just keep happening over and over and over. And it's just been this huge eye-opener to help them understand why they do the certain things they do in relationships, why they keep attracting the same situations in relationships. And it's helped them so much. And then flip it and say, is this something that I could share with you? I'd love you to check it out and see if it resonates with you. So, because the DA, as we know, as soon as they think you're coming to them saying, hey, you're not good enough, you have a problem that needs fixing, it's like the turtle is going to go right back in the shell and just be like, get away from me. I don't want to feel criticized. I don't want you to think that I'm not good enough and I need you to help me. Like there's just going to be all sorts of defenses coming up. But if you frame it in the sense that, hey, I found something that's helped me so much, I'm really excited about this. Can I share this with you in the hopes that you'll find it beneficial as well? So I think you could see the two different sort of approaches there. One is sort of, hey, you need this, like you need help. This is what you need, versus, hey, this is something that benefited me greatly. Just want to share it with you in case you want to check it out. So that would sort of be my advice.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the best way of doing things, because what you're doing is bypassing the core wounds for sure, instead of having, a situation. And I'm curious if you've had this before where, or let's even say, like, imagine this, right? So imagine back when you were DA, if somebody came to you and you were like, oh, you're a dismissive avoidant attachment style. What would you feel at that time? Like before doing any work, before knowing anything, like it often lands for people like, you have a disorder, you have like an issue, an emotional issue. And it's just a subconscious set of rules that we learned about love. That's what an attachment style represents. It's not a disorder, but it's so easy to conflate that. Like when you hear that for the first time, it sounds like somebody could be like narcissistic personality disorder. Like it sounds like it would be this label that represents this big thing, rather than realizing it's a set of patterns that you've learned about connection. It sounds like, oh, you have this thing, or you are this thing. And so it can be so easy to take for in the wrong direction. What would you feel in that situation at the time?
Yeah, it could be taken one of two ways. Number one, you could see all these things and it's like, holy crap, like this actually describes like the way I feel or the way that things happen in my relationship. So it can be actually like a relief, but also it depends who it's coming from. Like if it's coming from your partner and your partner
or your ex.
or your ex, exactly, who already is like really trying to like show you how you failed in relationships and how you need to change. It was all about like how you failed in the relationship, how you caused a lot of the problems. I would feel if it's coming from the ex or the current relationship that might not be going great, or it would feel like the blame is being put on me. And then it's like, here, let me show you like how you're a screw up. Like this really solidifies it right here. So I probably wouldn't love it in the past. However,
I laugh because it's not like none of this makes anybody a screw up at all. It's just, again, like our subconscious set of rules. But I laugh because it's like, it would be so easy to take so badly. Like it just, Anyway, sorry, continue with what you were saying.
No, and then it also adds another layer of like fear where you're like, oh my gosh. So you might read through the article or the video and then it's like, oh shoot, to heal this, I actually have to like open up and become vulnerable and share my inner feelings. Then there's like, get the heck away from me. Like if you're not ready for that, if you're not like, if that just completely is something that you're not ready for, that could also like turn you off a lot. You'd be like, get this stuff away from me. I'm sure a lot of partners of DAs have probably experienced that where, someone tried to share with them, some of the things that they need to do to sort of heal. And the DA is probably like, hell no, like I'm not built for that, or I can't do that. So yeah, that goes back to saying like the person sort of has to be ready and willing a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, just to flip that back to you, I'm curious if you were to be shown that at the height of your fearful avoidance, how do you think you would receive that?
To be honest, I think not because I was so healthy as a fearful avoidant, but because I had so many issues in relationships. Like they were just always so hard for me for so many reasons, like ups, downs, roller coaster. I was never like at peace in a relationship. It was always like on the high or the low, and the high meant the low was coming. The low meant it's the devastation of, it was a tricky thing for me to be in relationships. So, it was like, honestly, so it would have been something where if like that was explained in detail, I would have been like, oh, this is what I am. And this makes so much sense. Like, okay, relief, because I think I was seeking and because I knew. Whereas I feel like dismissive ones are often the portrayed as the more stable ones in relationships with a more anxious or fearful avoidant person. So because you kind of, sometimes the repression is a quiet thing, right? When you're the fearful avoidant, you're on the roller coaster, it's so loud. So you already know that you have challenges in relationships. And I think that fearful avoidants like want some kind of certainty or understanding. They want it to, be better. They want to get some kind of relief in their relationships a lot of the time. So I think that it's sort of like more of the first thing you said. It's almost validating and like reinforcing, oh, I have this set of patterns because look, it makes sense in my history and all those things. And fearful avoidants don't have as big of a fear of like opening up or going deep or doing that work. And so I think that it's sort of like is validating, but I think that if you have an ex saying, here you are this, and this is what's going on, you might be like, oh, this makes sense, but like, get out of here. I don't want to have you tell me what's wrong with me. Or in a relationship, if that was like brought up in an argument or the heat of a moment, I think that could absolutely be taken the wrong way and as if it were criticism. So I think no matter what the attachment style is, I always think the best way of going about it is just to say, I'm learning about attachment styles. Here's the 4 attachment styles. Here's what I think I am. What do you think you are? If you could talk to the person face to face around it, because it's sort of like, all risk or all reward, no risk, right? Like you get to get the information across without risking hurting that person or having it land badly. But to your most important earlier point, like if we're trying really, really hard to get somebody to have this information so they can change, sometimes we are trying to control how someone else is or feels because we think that when they change, it will change how we feel. And sometimes if that's really what our relationship is to it, again, we're trying to do things from the outside in instead of the inside out, being, hey, I'm actually going to work through what I'm feeling and my codependency and my ability to self-soothe and do that work first. And then sure, if by chance I end up sharing something with somebody and it makes an impact, great. But let the relationship be from the inside out, me doing the work first, not let me change or control the outcome over here so that could maybe change how I'm feeling over here because we didn't really do the inside job work first at that point.
100%. Yeah, a lot of energy can kind of be spent on trying to change the person outside of you. And like you said, like, if they were to change and heal, then they'll actually see how good I was. They'll see how, they'll validate them for being like an amazing partner. But really, you can bypass all that and work on a lot of your own core wounds and figure out that you are good enough and you don't have to people please and you don't need this person's approval to tell you that you're loved and you're a wonderful person, basically.
Absolutely.
But I know it's tough. You also have to look at your patterns too. Like if you're dating a DA and then you've dated another DA and then another DA, another DA, you got to think, okay, should I be worrying about healing all these ex-partners or should I wonder why do I keep attracting like an avoidant partner? So again, just you want to put that energy in towards more yourself and healing that. And I can almost guarantee you if you like heal towards secure, like you probably won't date another dismissive avoidant again. Not to knock DAs. Again, DAs are amazing, sensitive, awesome people. But generally, when you do the work to become secure, a lot of the behaviors that are, don't serve you in your best interest, they'll be pretty like unattractive and you won't really stick around to sort of get the relationship, a long-term relationship because you'll see, what, I don't think this person can give me that what I deserve and what I need. So
the big part of it is like we attract our subconscious comfort zone in relationship to self. So a lot of like people, like let's say you have an AP and they keep finding themselves with a DA, often it's because that person mirrors back to them, right? Like the anxious, preoccupied is always people pleasing. So they're dismissing and avoiding their own needs. And so when somebody else dismisses and avoids their needs too, they're like, oh, this is so familiar. The way this person treats me is so familiar. It may feel uncomfortable, but it's familiar and thus safe. And so the subconscious mind will keep investing in these people. And again, like that's not everybody has a different relationship to these things and reasons as to why, and it doesn't make any attachment style bad. In fact, there's like a lot of superpowers each of the attachment styles have. But if you don't want to be in the situation where you constantly date people who are hot and cold or anxious or unavailable or things like that, to your point, it's such a powerful thing to just check in to relationship to self and be like, well, what is the common denominator theme here? And sometimes we can share with a partner and the partner in a relationship will be super willing to do the work. But with an ex, it's just such a trickier situation. And again, if you do end up sharing to the person who asked this question, share it from your perspective and lens, and then don't think, okay, that means that we could work the relationship out, vet and see what they do with that information. If they're like, wow, I wish I knew this earlier. this could really have worked things out for us. Why don't we try it again? And here's the work I'm going to do. And here's what I could do differently. And what about you? And let's do this together. Like if somebody shows up like that, okay, that's great. Lots of green flags. That could be a great outcome. But if it's just a sharing and the person doesn't seem to really take much action, then you're still going to end up in that same scenario as why you broke up in the first place. So I just think it's an important thing to keep in mind.
And be super gentle with yourself. Like you said, I wish I knew this earlier. That's probably the most common comment that I see on a lot of our social medias. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, if I only knew this 5 years ago, my marriage could have saved. If I knew this 10 years ago, my high school sweetheart, we would have been married by now. So just be gentle with yourself. Like we're all trying. And a lot of these things are subconscious and we don't even know they're happening. So just really be happy that now you can have the information and just slowly do the work, and things will get kind of easier and easier. So just wanted to mention that. And, I hope they teach this thing in school one day, because if there's something we're teaching kids, then this will be so much easier as we grow up into adult relationships. So
100%.
Let's hope one day.
I know. Or in the meantime, come to the personal development school and take all of our courses and join us in there doing the healing work.
Sure.
But that would be an amazing long-term thing for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to close out this episode. Mike, tell our listeners a little bit about where they can find you and also what you're up to.
So I actually just got Instagram 3 weeks ago. So I'm joining the 21st century. We'll put my Instagram handle in the show notes. That's kind of the main place you can find me. I'm just hanging out here in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico the past couple of years. So if you see me wearing a lot of floral shirts, it's because it's usually sunny out. This is kind of the dress code. But no, aside from that, just doing the podcasting with you and always trying to work on myself and sort of better myself in relationships. It's sort of something that you have to keep on doing. It's easy to sort of slip back into old patterns. So definitely want to stay on top of that. But that's about it. Hit me up on Instagram, and if you have any questions, send me a message.
Amazing. And then if anybody wants to do a deep dive into any of our courses or anything like that, there is always a link down below, and we will put for today a 7-day free trial to any course that you want to check out at the Personal Development School, so you can kickstart your healing journey. Honestly, 7 days is more than enough time to actually get through a full course, because we try to make them a couple hours in length, so they don't take forever and you can really get those rapid results. So we will put that link down below. Again, you can check us out here weekly on YouTube, or you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. Thank you for stopping by and listening, and can't wait to see everybody next Tuesday on another episode of Can This Be Fixed? If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Share it with friends and family who are on their journey of personal development and growth, and thank you for listening. Next week, we'll be back with more insights to guide you on your journey. And until then, keep practicing our tools and strategies to change your subconscious mind and apply some of the powerful learnings from this podcast so that you experience real life transformation.